Hi, I'm Naomi Hambleton with A to Z Lactation, and I just want to do a quick rundown of the phases of lactation and the phases of mammary gland changes over our lifetime. So what happens is we have the first phase, which is embryogenesis. And embryogenesis is basically when those breast buds are laid down when we are in utero, when we ourselves are forming. Those organs, there's cells laid down there to eventually then continue growing. Then we have mammogenesis, which is basically when those actual mammary glands and that tissue start to develop. So that starts around puberty, which is usually age 10 to 12, but can be a little different for everyone. And then that continues with each menstrual cycle as well, so that estrogen lays down more hormones that tell our body to continue to make more mammary gland tissue. And that also has what we call lacteal cells, which are those cells, those specialty cells that make our milk, make human milk. And that happens through each menstrual cycle. And that continues usually till we're about mid-20s. And then that can happen for teenage to 20s. Then we have lactogenesis, which is basically that milk secretion, that milk making stuff starts happening inside of those mammary glands. And when you are pregnant, that happens, that first stage, around about 16 weeks gestation. So what that means is we have all sorts of changes in our hormones, and our body says, hey, we need to start making some milk. There's going to be a baby. And if you are not pregnant and you are going to adopt or use a surrogate, there are other ways to handle that with different hormones and herbs and pumping that also can start signaling our body to do that. So that's stage one. We have lots of changes in different things. For example, if we were to test our own bodies, we would end up with more lactose in our body, less sodium, and so forth. Then we have lactogenesis 2, which is days 2 or 3 of life, postpartum. So baby's here, ready to feed, and we are making milk. So what happens is that is mostly a biochemical thing that happens where our hormones tell us to make milk, but we have to remove milk at that time to tell our body that we're going to move into the next phase. So that lactogenesis stage is like 2 to 3 days of life clinically to up to about those major changes in day 10. So when we get about to day 10, hopefully we have either been breastfeeding directly or removing milk by hand or removing milk by pump, because that's telling our body, hey, we need this, prolactin, we need oxytocin, we need to get moving, keep moving. So that is what we call full lactation, full making milk, full time. So that happens where we go from colostrum to transitional milk to our full, milk supply. And that continues for as long as we remove milk. So if you're going to continue feeding your baby, you're going to continue to make milk as long as you're removing milk, that 8 to 10 times a day, every day. So either directly by breastfeeding or chest feeding, or pumping your milk or hand expressing your milk 8 to 10 to 12 times every day to tell your body, hey, keep going, putting in that order for the long-term supply. And then you have involution. So involution happens when we wean. So if you have a baby and you decide to go to formula, your involution is going to happen sooner. So we have that protective time of lactogenesis stage 2, where for a few days our milk is going to keep making. But if we're not removing milk, either by having baby remove it or by hands or pump, then our body's going to go, time for involution early. And if we're going to add solids at 6 months, that's when involution starts. Now, that doesn't mean you suddenly don't make any milk. What happens is slowly your milk-making cells die off or involute. And so if you are skipping pumpings and kind of slowly going down, you're going to slowly have that involution happen. If you wean abruptly, that'll happen a little bit more abruptly, but it still doesn't happen just right the day you stop, removing milk. And what happens though is with each pregnancy, this happens again. So it's not like suddenly your involution, all these milk making cells died and they're not coming back. What happens is these hormones continue and it happens all over again. And what's nice is some of that tissue growth happens with each baby. So sometimes we work with parents who have had IGT or some other issues, and maybe with the first baby they could make a certain amount of milk. Maybe they made 80% of what their baby needed every day, or maybe they made 50% or 20%. But then with the next one, they might even make more, because the longer you're continuing to actually remove milk or breastfeed your baby, you continue doing that. So your body is really interesting, and I just love the science behind it. So I thought I would give a little info. There's a lot more behind this, but I just love that there are stages of our actual mammary gland production. And then of course that changes with menopause too.